The local crew has a couple of nights off, so the coach, Jimmy Lynam, they do a great job on NBC Sports Philadelphia pre- and post-game, which, I would imagine, we were talking before about, Coach, first off, welcome to the program. How you been, Coach?
Pretty good, Mike. How you doing?
Doing great. It's good to talk to you. We were talking about how James Harden said today he wanted to come to Philly, and I said, just think about where this team was 2013, 14, 15, and to have the guys a three-time MVP, 10-time, all-star scoring champion say that I want to play in that town. It shows you how far this organization has really come from where they were about 10 years ago.
I would say yes and no to that, Mike, in all honesty. I think two prime reasons that James Harden wants to come. It's a tribute to the franchise and where they are in terms of talent level.
Sure.
Number one, James feels that the Sixers, and I agree with him, have a legitimate chance to win an NBA championship. But I don't think you can discount his relationship with Daryl Morey.
Oh, right. But part of that is Morey.
Absolutely.
Part of that is to Morey making the decision to say, I'm willing to come to that organization, which he wouldn't have said that 6-7 years ago, right? He came here because he also felt they were close to winning.
No pun or disrespect intended. Depends what kind of number you're dangling.
Fair enough. All right, James is here. Everybody's excited about the matchup. If you were coaching this team right now and got James Harden entered into the equation, how does Jim Lynam use the duo together?
Well, Mike, in all honesty, I don't have a knee-jerk answer to that, and nor does Doc. I think you have to give it a little bit of time. This is not and you can trust me with this one. Mm-hmm. This is not a roll the ball out situation. You're going to have to figure out. You have two obviously prolific scorers. Joel's leading the league in scoring. I think he right now is the front runner for MVP. And James Harden is, he's probably top 15 in scoring, 22 plus a game. And I know he's second in assists. He's averaging double-digit assists, 10 plus assists a game. So the real question is, how can you max out these two guys? In other words, you want the two of them to be as close to themselves as possible. In layman's terms, you don't want them getting in each other's way. You want them complementing each other to make it more difficult for the defense to guard them.
Yeah, and you look at what Harden does really well. Obviously, he does the step back. He can score from almost everywhere. But one thing is, this team has constantly lacked, Coach, is that guy in the big moment. Like, hey, 30 seconds left, here's the ball, get to the basket, either get a bucket, get yourself fouled. I mean, that is something that this team has lacked throughout the entire time, even through their success here. They just haven't been able to get a guy to score in the biggest moment. Is that what intrigues you about adding this player?
Yeah, great observation on your part. I would say that is number one, what you just said. This team is good enough. They're going to be in a lot of close games come playoff time, and I don't care who the opponent is, meaning whether it's the first round of a playoff or if they're moving on, let's say, to an Eastern Conference final or, knock on wood, the championship round. That I could not agree more. They've not had that kind of player. You need that kind of guy. Jimmy Butler would have been the closest to that. A great scorer, not a great shooter, is Butler. But James Harden, you can take him. He's as good a scorer as there's been in this league for the last decade. And he's, really good shooter. Not great shooter, but a really good shooter. And maybe as good as there's ever been in the last thing you said, knowing how to draw a foul.
How is that process where you got Joel now, who's been basically everything's running through him so far this year? I don't know that we've ever seen. Have you ever seen a season that from an individual like this?
Yeah, way back. His name was Chamberlain. First name Will.
Well, if you're going back to that point, that tells you something. Because I said the other night, I've never seen anything like this. I mean, this guy is a little bit of this Olajuwon, a little bit of Shaq, a little bit of Dirk, a little bit of this guy. I mean, it's unbelievable, the versatility that he is displaying. When you're coaching in that big moment, are there nights where you're going to say, Joel, you take us to the end? Are you going to have to say, James, you take us to the end? How do you split that up?
Yeah, no, a little bit of both. And then sometimes, you might make a decision on your end of the court, and then the guy at the other end makes a decision, to try to trump you. And that's where it's great to have the 1-2 punch. Like if you opt to put it into Joe's hands, and let's say they double Joe to take it out of his hands, well, to have a James Harden that you can kick a ball to, time remaining on the clock, I mean, come on, that's about as good as you could possibly get. So there's the possibilities are very, very enticing. And as I said at the top, this team has a legitimate chance, I believe, to win an NBA title. My only caveat, Mike, with the whole thing is, did you have to give away both Seth Curry and the big fella,
right,
Drummond? Because I think if you still had them, then I think the Sixers are favored to win the whole thing. So,
yeah,
we'll never know the answer to that.
As you could speak to, Coach, one of the biggest problems they've had is even with the lack of ability to get that bucket in a big game, late game situation, they've been in these series. But anytime Joel has left the floor, it's been a complete dumpster fire. And it seems that they finally had found a guy that can give you 12 to 15 minutes that the whole train won't fall off the track. It almost seems like they're back to square one there.
Well, again, I'd say yes and no. Yes, you're right in your observation, but it's not just Joel coming off the court. Obviously, when Joe's on the court, you're playing through him. If your personnel and your bench is strong enough, when Joe's off the court, it doesn't mean you have to play through his sub, or his backup, meaning in this case Drummond. Drummond's obviously he's probably the best backup in the league. But my concern is not having Drummond, not having Curry. You've watered down your bench. Curry, it's hard to overstate who he was. I'll give you one example, Mike. Go back a few years, and the game is in Miami, San Antonio, Miami, for the NBA title, and San Antonio has the O'Brien Trophy in their hand. Okay, ball's knocked loose, a fluke offensive rebound play. Where does the ball go? It bounces out toward the corner. Who's standing in the corner? A guy by the name of Ray Allen, one of the best three-point shooters in the history of the league. What did he do? He picked up a loose ball, jumped in the air, and sent a three-ball dead center.
Right.
Ready? No, sorry, San Antonio. Trophy not going there. Boom. Stays in Miami. Come on.
Right, and we had Tim Legler on the other day. Now, he said one of the things about Harden that impressed him the most was when he was in Houston, that he made a lot of average shooters household names. Is that something that you see? Hey, Danny Green shoots 38%. He's now 40%. Max, is that something that Harden should bring to the table, that guys that are maybe average or good become good and great?
Yeah, no surprise that Tim would point that out without question. That's what guys like Harden do, and the fact he does it 10 times a night.
Well, what he said, Coach, was the biggest component to shooting for an average shooter is time. You get more time, makes you a better shooter. You can square. You don't have to rush. And that he should give these guys more time.
Without question. As a little caveat, I coached Legler.
Right.
John Nash, who was the GM, signed Tim Legler, and that was his first real stint in the NBA. And that year, Tim Legler won the three-point shooting contest. So when it comes to shooting, listen to Tim Legler. He's as good as there is.
He mentioned his biggest concern. He said the guy affected the most, no question in his mind, is Maxey. How do you look at Maxey and Harden coexisting?
Yeah, again, a good question, because obviously you need Maxey to be able to play at or near the level he is if you're going to aspire, to go all the way. And that's to be determined. I can't predict that. I will say this, way back, it shows you my age, number one, and a little lesson in ancient history. There was a Philly guy by the name of Earl, and back in the day, when I knew him at first, his name was Earl Monroe. He became Earl the Pearl Monroe. And he was was an all-star NBA player in Baltimore. They were the Baltimore Bullets at the time. He was traded to New York to join the same backcourt as Walt Clyde Frazier, another NBA All-Star. And there were a lot of skeptics, me included. How are those two guys going to play together? And I've talked to Walt Frazier over the years, never Earl. And Frazier said, you get two great players who really want to win, and he said, put it together. They'll figure it out.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that will be the case to answer your question with James Harden and Maxey.
Yeah, the other guy would be Harris. Now, I would look at Harris as a low-level number 2 scorer, but a high-level third option. It feels like the Sixers have just never had a number 2. That's, they needed Tobias to be that second guy. That's not his best feature. You can't ask Ben to be that secondary scorer. That's not what he wants to do. They just haven't had the second guy. Harris as the third guy, though. How's that fit?
Yeah, I think you're right on again. That's another big benefit of this trade. No problem James Harden filling that role, number 2 scorer. So automatically that kicks Tobias, down a notch. And sure, he's much more, I'm going to say, suited, much more comfortable. Could Tobias score, let's say, 21 a game? Yeah, if you really geared a lot of stuff toward him. But that's not him at his best. Playing like in the flow, getting you 8-9 rebounds, 4 or 5 assists, and scoring, on the average. Not to say he can't score 25 in a given game, but he's averaging like 18 points a game. That's a terrific number 3, and that's another plus with respect to this trade.
Yeah, you mentioned Curry, not here anymore in Drummond, but losing Curry, do you worry about where they're going to get that three-point shooting? What kind of three-point shooting team is this now?
Well, that's exactly why I used that Ray Allen example. You can't have enough three-point shooting, particularly if you have two. James Harden, over the history of his career, is a great one-on-one player. Well, guess what? They're not going to let, in the playoffs, James Harden torture some defensive guard. They'll run another guy at him. Now, obviously, to have Joel Embiid roaming around in the paint when Harden gets doubled is a tremendous plus and asset, and that will discourage some double teaming. But when guys get double teamed, by and large, if you're going to be successful attacking double teams, whether it's Joe getting doubled or Harden getting doubled, three-point shooting is usually part of the recipe for success. And you just gave up one of the top three-point shooters in the history of the league. And I go back to the question, did you have to give him up?
Jimmy Lynam's with us, and obviously the Sixers, they got tonight, they got Thursday, and then James will jump in there. Are you starting Maxey together? Do you bring him off the bench? Do you think he comes off the bench and runs the second unit, stagger their minutes, or play them together?
Yeah, I think my guess is Maxey will start. I wouldn't quibble if he didn't. That Doc and his guys will figure that out.
Right.
Maxey's still certainly. It's about who finishes the game, really. And I think, in fairness, you have to give the coaching staff and the players, a little bit of time. They don't have a lot of time. We're going to have I think we're down to 24 games after these two this week after the break.
Yep.
So yeah, they're going to have to figure it out in a hurry. But there'll be some decisions to be made, and guys do have to get kind of comfortable with one another. I mean, yes, the players know each other. Basically, Joe knows how Harden plays and vice versa, but that's not the same in two of them being out there every night. But if you did say just then, Mike, I think a key thing that I think Doc will have one of these two guys, meaning Embiid or James Harden, on the court at all times. That's another huge plus to this deal.
I guess we'll close in this. Harden's here. Simmons is not. Simmons and Embiid. What was missing that they just couldn't? Were they just not ready? Were they just not? I saw you the other night said they were a good fit. That you thought they were a good fit. So what?
Let me interrupt you to say, no, I quoted Joel Embiid in saying they were a good fit. That's what I did.
Okay.
Joe said that after the game when he spoke about the trade and about Ben. He said they were terrific, and with the caveat during the regular season that they weren't able to deliver in playoff time. But let me remind you, Ben Simmons missed the playoffs in the bubble with injury. Joel Embiid was sick and injured in the playoffs versus Toronto. Those two things were facts.
So with that, Was it they just weren't ready? It wasn't the right Why were they not able to get it done in their time? I say all the time, look, Jordan gets drafted in 84, he didn't win a championship right away. I mean, people just think these things are ready-made. LeBron gets drafted. It takes you 10 years. You don't come right out. They had 4 cracks at it together. You mentioned sometimes we're altered. Were they on the path? Did they give up too early, or were they just not made to win a title together?
No, I'm not. Well, I'm going to throw out your last thought and say yes to the other things that you said. And I think there's a truth to what Joel said. After complimenting the two of them, which deservedly so, he then said that Ben's priority was at this point in time, meaning the end of last season, it was in another direction. He wanted to be the star, of his team. And obviously that wasn't going to happen here. Whether you want to say Joe was the star or you share the limelight. But, all I can say to that, I don't really know Ben Simmons. I think he's a tremendous player. Yeah. I think he's probably going to be real good in Jersey. But I would just say, dude, everybody's welcome to an opinion, me included. I think anybody who's a star who has a chance to play with Joel Embiid, if you're trying to win NBA championships, it's like dying and going to heaven. Are you serious? Come on.
Right. Well, please. Ben did say...
Can they play together? I mean, really, I get annoyed, Mike. I'll say it. Can they play together? Are they good together? I mean, please.
Right.
Joel Embiid would be good together with the best player at Mainland High School, okay? And you can say the same about Ben.
Right. Ben did say today that his best style of play, and he mentioned by name, was with Bellinelli, Ilyasova. That's where he's at his best. Maybe he's right, but he's going to have Curry, Harris, Patty Mills. Oh, Durant and Kyrie are on that team too. So are we going to get to see the best version of Ben? Is this going to be the best version of Ben Simmons on this Nets team?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, let me answer your question this way. We had a pretty good version of Ben Simmons here.
Oh, I agree.
For the time
hey, Coach, I'm no Ben.
It ended bad.
I'm no Ben hater by any stretch. I appreciate it what Ben brought. Right.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting you are,
right.
But let's just establish that's fact, what I just said.
Agreed.
He was pretty darn good. He made 3 All-Star games. Come on.
Yeah.
Now, that it ended poorly, without question. And because it ended the way it did, I think rightly so, that kind of shined the spotlight on his deficiencies. Like, Ben, if we're going to be knocking on contender door, which we're supposed to be able to do, if you have Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid on the same thing. But if we're going to do that on a consistent basis against the likes of the Giannis's of the world, I mean, there's other good teams out there, then guess what? We got to kind of somehow patch that hole in your game. And as I've said, you and I have talked about this in the past, Mike. I used to get annoyed going all the way back about 3-point shooting and all that nonsense. What Ben Simmons has got to do is make a foul shot when the game is on the line. That's what he's got to do. The rest of it doesn't matter. Trust me.
Agree. I've agreed with you the whole time. Unfortunately, it didn't work out. He's in Brooklyn. James Harden's here, which means that the Sixers now have heightened expectations, I would imagine. You bring in a player like Harden, the expectations go up. We shall see it all unfold. NBC Sports Philadelphia, the guys will be back. The crew will be back. Amy, the coach, Mark Jackson. What do you guys have, a couple nights off here? Are you back on Friday the 25th?
Correct. This is the All-Star break, as you know, on Sunday. And then these 2 games, just by accident, are both national games, so we don't have shows.
Right.
Because the game's not on our air. So, it gave us a nice little respite.
I said, this is the cumulative. This is the cumulative effect of it all, coaches. They didn't do full pregame shows and postgame shows every night. People didn't care. Now, man, they get upset when this team loses on Tuesday night in February like they lost Game 7.
No, I hear you, and rightly so, Mike. I mean, this team is they've been pretty good all year long, and even last year they were terrific. I thought, playoffs notwithstanding. But no, what you just said, they've ratcheted it up. They knew what they were doing, and I think collectively, from Daryl Morey right down to Doc and the players, they're ready for the challenge. There's no automatic here, but this is what it's about. You try to try to put together as good a team as you can. You know, there's other competition out there. Let's throw it up and see where we are.
All right, tonight against the Celtics. Coach Jimmy Lynam, enjoy the rest of your vacation, and we'll catch up with you soon, Coach.
Good talking, Mike.
As always, Jim Lynam, NBC Sports Philadelphia, and, of course, their pre- and post-game show. Mark Jackson, Amy Fadul, they do a great job. I can talk basketball with the coach forever. I mean, I look at the clock. I said, oh, man, he's on vacation, by the way. He texted me last night. He's in Florida hanging out down there, but he was kind enough to join us here